Now, I don't believe in ghosts. Sorry, all of you that do, but I don't. I don't believe in bad energy and aliens and transdimensional beings. But I do believe in shadow people. Why? Because I've seen them. In Wikipedia, it states that they have red glowing eyes, but I've never seen that. I've just seen a shadow in the form of a human move just like a human. So, one of the first times I can remember seeing a shadow person was when I was in 5th grade. I went to a pretty exclusive private school, so we took a lot of field trips. One trip I'll never forget was when we went to the dunes of Michigan in the middle of the winter. I don't know whose bright idea this was, but it was like a deserted summer camp, basically. One of the counselors did teach us about crunching wintergreen lifesavers in the dark, and you could see sparks, so that was pretty cool. He did it in the woods, so it was pretty neat to see as a 5th grader. The camp was covered with snow, and was probably rocking during the summer, but in the winter, eating in the dining hall made for 6 times as many children and a skeleton crew of staff was a little haunting. The place was kind of old too. The buildings were definitely mid-20th century and creaked and groaned and were probably the shit when they were made, but now they were just kind of old and had that smell of thousands of stinky kids going in and out of them through the years. Our counselor wasn't one of our teachers. It was a real counselor from the camp. At night, we had to sleep in a cabin that segregated boys from girls. The counselor was actually a cool guy, and probably smoked weed, and never had a desk job in his life, so we liked him. When he assigned us our bunk beds, I was against the wall on the back side of the cabin top bunk. There were 2 rows of bunk beds and probably 6 to a side. I was pretty stoked about having top bunk and having the wall next to me. Although, the counselor was by the door in front of the cabin, and of course, this was the 80s, so no second door fire escape. He slept on the left side bottom bunk, which made sense being by the door and at ground level. Now, this place was really far north in Michigan, at the top of the index finger of the mitten shape of the state, but not the U-P, and it was really quiet and dark. When the counselor turned off the cabin lights, there was nearly no light. The only light was from an outbuilding about 50 yards away, a typical sodium outdoor bulb. So us boys settled down for the night, and I felt a little restless and couldn't really sleep that great, and wasn't even sure if I fell asleep. But I looked towards the door, and there it was, a shadow person. The shadow person was probably 7 feet tall because when he started walking, floating, he had to bend down every time he looked at a boy. It was like he was checking on them, moving one bunk to the next, side to side, bottom bunk, then top bunk. I obviously couldn't believe what I was seeing. I was totally petrified. The shadow person was moving at a leisurely rate, not fast, but not slow, and only really paying attention to the boy whose bed he was checking out. As it got closer, I had a better look at him. He wasn't really detailed. He was static or fuzzy on the edges of his shape. Ridiculous as it may sound, he kinda looked like a stick figure, but all black as night. I could only make him out because of the light through the only 2 front windows of the cabin with the residual light from the outbuilding. As he creeped closer and closer to my bed, I was totally paralyzed. I felt like I couldn't say or move anything even if I wanted to. A little odd, too, was that it was as though someone had turned down the volume, because before, you could hear the kids tossing and turning. It was nearly silent now. As stated, I was the last bed on the right side top bunk. Shadow Man made it to the top bunk next to mine, and it seemed like an eternity but his movements weren't really that slow, just normal speed. Until this point, everything was on the rails, checking one bed to the next, so maybe I could have explained it away. But as he checked the top second to last bunk next to mine, he abruptly looked my way. The way he was moving, he should have gone to the left side second to last bunk to be uniform, but instead his body or head tilted towards me. He kind of cocked his head like dogs do when they are confused by something to one side. Then he inched closer and closer at a much slower pace, as if he was sneaking up on me. I assure you, my eyes were wide open. I was clinging to my itchy baby blue wool blanket and my sheet and had them yanked up past my nose so only my eyes and the top of my head were out. Then the shadow man's face got closer and closer to mine, and there was honestly nothing to make out. It was just an empty void of space shaped like a person, but as his head got closer, I couldn't see his body any longer. Closer and closer. And there was a slight chill. Not a huge one, but like 10 degrees colder. At this point, my heart was racing. I couldn't make sense of anything, and I didn't know why nobody else was experiencing this. It was like I fell between the cracks and was seeing something that I shouldn't. The blackness of his head totally engulfed me in what seemed like an instant, and it was morning, and light was outside, and everyone was waking up. When I referred to this story a few times since, I called him the Sandman, because it was like an entity making sure we were all asleep, and he caught me awake and knocked me out. Weird, but true.